Vartan, Kerasimian. Yes, very Armenian name. I was born and raised here in Glendale, in an area called Montrose, up near the foothills, actually near La Cañada. Some people don't even know that's part of Glendale, but it is, yeah. So I recall that was a long process. Coming out was more of a self-discovery process, and it took several years and stages of learning about myself. And I think that's pretty normal for most anybody in going through their 20s, even in their 30s. But it's about finding your boundaries. And when you have a good core, when you have a good, solid foundation of what your values are, and as long as you stay true to them, I think you can express those values in different ways. And that was a good way to kind of discover how to come out, what it meant to come out. Growing up, I had no reference whatsoever to what gay was, other than comedy, characters in theater, and I didn't relate to any of them. The cross-dressing characters, it was all for humor. So I understood the humor, but I didn't relate to characters. So I never thought of myself as being gay. So that took several years, and I was in the Air Force at the time. Up until 18, I had no interest in anything sexual. I was very focused on career and school and following that path of being very focused. So around 18, 19, when I was in the service, you have a lot of boring hours to wait around for something, and then suddenly you have to be ready to go. So in between those times, you get to know a lot of people from around the country, different lives. And I served during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So it made it even more challenging for me to really learn anything about the gay world. And I fortunately did find some good friends, and even found a gay bar and went there to talk to people and get to know them and see if I could relate. So that's where I started building a little bit more of the understanding of which part of my identity was still yet to be discovered. And it was just through getting to know people and understanding their story. So I want to share that, because not everyone's coming out story is this big extravaganza or big drama. So when I came back home from service, during my last 2 years of service, I actually was dating and experimented with men and women sexually and even romantically. So I felt really torn and didn't know where to land. I even fell in love with a girl that I thought would be my wife. And it's sort of like a movie that plays in your head. You think you're supposed to have a certain life in a certain way. And that was understandable to me. It fit, it made sense. But then I had the same experience with a man, and that really flipped things around. And now I was really confused and didn't understand where I belong. So I shied away from both of those relationships, and the first boyfriend, I guess, I had at that time wanted to stay together and get married, and I had no idea what that was like. What does it mean to be gay and married? So I ended that one, and many years later, we actually have found really good friendship and very good bond of, he's even met my family, and that was very interesting. So that was all very good. We had a very healthy respect. So it was easy to build on that. And, but that's where it started for me, to explore that option more and find ways to express myself as a gay man. And you find yourself going to the bars and going to clubs, going to drag shows, going to whatever it was expressed, and none of those things were, it felt like I didn't really belong there. Unless I was really artistic or really expressed, it would have been a forced, false narrative of myself to try to fit in. Eventually, I think I hit an age range around 25 when I just didn't care anymore where I fit in. Wherever I went to, I belonged there. So when I had that attitude and confidence, I said over time I'm going to try to figure out who I am and how I express myself. But at least in these settings, I'm comfortable, so I don't have to feel like I fit in. I can just be the one interesting, mysterious guy. Oh, Vartan, what is that? Where are you from? It's like you're a unicorn everywhere you go. So that was fun for me. I was having a good time. Coming out to my family while living under my parents' roof, taking care of my grandmother as she was aging, and we all were taking care of her. Going through that process of life and that commitment to family was what really held it together for me. And even then, with that love and support being there, I felt hesitant, tremendous amount of weight and being torn in different directions of not being able to express that part of myself because I wasn't really clear what that part of me was. So eventually it happened in sequence within about a 2-year period. And I had a boyfriend, now at that time going on our 3rd year. And they started noticing I just would drop hints, and we would watch funny shows together like The Golden Girls or Frasier, and there would be a lot of gay references, and I would go, oh, okay, that's funny, but I can also relate to this. I can see that from that angle. And I would get their perspective on what they were really aware of or open to, and I felt confident that they would appreciate and love me no matter what. So I was not wrong, and it was still a process for my father and my brother. Maybe not as much with my mother, which was kind of anticlimactic. I was expecting more from her, but she was just like, oh, well, just be safe, kind of, it's okay, I know. But they did get through that emotional momentum of their fear was, how do I relate to you? The bigger fear was, how do we make sure you're protected from others ridiculing you or putting you down? And that was their big concern. And in the Armenian community, it's still frowned upon, even denied that there is such a thing as gay Armenians. But there are, and that was another discovery. So it's been an interesting journey. There's still parts of me that are still being expressed in a greater community. And I'm learning that it doesn't have to be the thing that defines me, but it's part of who I am. And just like being Armenian and being an American, being prior service, those are all elements of what shaped who I am, and there's more that I'm going to strive for, but that's still going to be part of me. It just doesn't have to be the main thing that defines me. I think I'm seeing two narratives happening at the same time. Either there's a rejection from the family, the parent disowns practically the child, and they eventually get to make that effort to bridge that bond again, and it does become better later on. So that's more dominant, I think, in a lot of different American cultures, and even in cultures within the U.S. that are like Armenian cultures, and Latino cultures have a lot of that problematic resistance to. The Black community has a lot of that as well. So I think there's a lot of common ground there with those different communities here in the U.S. We're lucky to have that availability to go somewhere else. If that love is not there, it'll be somewhere else. But still, there is hope to get that love to reconnect and become even better. So to them, I would say, if that's the case, there's always somewhere to go, someone to talk to. It could be a teacher, a mentor, and I did mentor a lot of high school age kids since I was, fresh out of the military. So 18 years, I mentored a lot of high school kids. And that was a good way for me to learn about myself also. Not once during that mentorship was my romantic life ever a topic or a forefront or a sharing thing, but I was just there to let them know that they do have that support. I've had a few people come to me and talk to me about things they didn't want to share with their parents, and I always encourage that they find a communication path with their parents and still be prepared with anything. You may be surprised how they react. So it's my encouragement for everybody to live honestly and have honest communication. And a lot of cultures, you just kind of go along with what your role is in that family, and some of those things can't be expressed. So I think having different ways to connect with different communities will help give you that variety of language, variety of different perspective in how to approach certain topics. And for me, it was comedy on television, which, there's a common comedy that we all can relate to. Even in theater, there's a lot of comedy that just human nature, how we can relate to. And that sort of breaks down all the barriers. And now it's, oh, I know someone who's gay. Oh, I know, and you don't have to be like them, but you at least know someone that exists. It's not some, abstract concept. And there are those who will have great, open parents who say you can be any gender, you can be anyone, you can be loved no matter what. And I see a different problem arising with that, which is, well, you took away all the great story that I could have had for coming out. But there still is a coming out even after that. Support is there. You still have to learn who you are and how you express yourself later in life, decades later. And that will be more through your workplace, perhaps, or when you get involved in different communities and you have to find common ground and how to work together with other people. So that will be another coming out. Like how much of that part of your identity is going to be at the forefront. If you're going into a professional field, it's in the background somewhere. When I was a trainer at a gym, at Gold's Gym for 6 years, nobody cared that I was gay. I was the only one. But, and everyone was okay with it. But it's because they got to know me first, how I am professionally, how I am with people, and I was very consistent. So I earned trust very quickly. And then after that, it's like, oh, you also have this part of your life. Oh, you also have that going on. And then you became more three-dimensional, more interesting. So that's how I approach everybody, whether I'm going to work with them or, if I'm going to mentor them. It's get to know me as a human first, what I've done to create this personality. And then we can talk about what labels you're falling under. The labels are a little too rigid sometimes. Yeah, so there never was, and there never has been all my life growing up here. But it's interesting to see now there is some in schools, at least representation of some sort, and allies as well can be, involved. So for me growing up, there was no such thing. And in the Armenian community, it's also starting to evolve a little bit. We do have groups that around the country are gay Armenian, and there are a lot of outlets for artistic expression in those groups as well. But I think it's so early on, there's not quite a cohesive who are we and what makes us so unique. It seems to be that you have this, where you have this ancient culture that's still being celebrated and discovered, and there's so much to learn still. If that is shared with everybody and they can look past the LGBTQ identity, I think that'll help a lot of Armenians who can't relate or have a very negative, view of that to have that embracement. So I'm working on that now, is building that community and that awareness of within the Armenian community. It's like, this is just a normal part of being Armenian. It doesn't have to be this other, and oh, you're not Armenian anymore because. So it's just another part of how we express being an Armenian. Can be done that way with LGBTQ theme. First we have to exist. So it's starting there, and then once they're past that denial, we kind of grow into, okay, now what do we do with this? And I think arts are a great place for people. Arts, music is a great place for people to move past all those barriers and to have a more common language that they find with each other. So far, I've been involved with GlendaleOUT, and I have been involved with LGBTQ organizations since college, but I did now being involved in more of the Glendale community. It didn't exist. It's very new. And the pleasant surprise was when we decided to do Pride, the first successful one, I would say. We wanted to keep it more local, more community, and get people to come here to know that there is a gay community, an LGBTQ community in Glendale. What that looks like, we don't know. That's what Pride is for, is to get people together to find something that everyone is interested in, and how they want to make Glendale unique versus, let's say, West Hollywood, which has its own identity. Silver Lake has its own identity. There's aspects, and we're trying to create that here. The pleasant surprise is there's no resistance whatsoever to that. The churches, the city council, the school district, police department, everybody is very pro and very supportive, and it's been a very lovely find to see everybody just come together and have that same mutual respect and understanding of each other, and very mutually supportive. So it's very new, but it's there. And of course the library, oh my goodness. Not that I can think of, yeah, none come to mind, but maybe this is a good place to build one. Very positive, very, yeah, very inclusive, very positive. You can walk down the street, hold hands with whoever, and nobody cares. You could be dressed however, and still, it's fine. There is still some of that conservatism with cultures that live in a bubble, like the Armenian community, and there are other communities that are like that, with that old cultural mind, and they just don't want to go outside their bubble. I'm very lucky that I had the family that I have, and my parents being who they are, my grandparents even being a little bit more aware of the human condition, and that every culture there's a good and a bad, and you have to take into consideration that you're going to attract the good, and if you do encounter something negative, you have to engage that with empathy, you have to engage it with knowledge and not with anger. And I think that helps kind of create more safe spaces. And if there are places where people don't feel comfortable, it's a matter of exposure and people going, oh, this is normal now. We see this all the time. And seeing that it's not a threat, or it's not so other that it now violates any other lifestyle. You know, it's just another lifestyle that people can find ways to express.